They thought they were the perfect family. Sunday dinners, birthday parties, the laughter of children echoing down a quiet suburban street. But all of that was destroyed by a single test tube, a strand of hair, and the truth written in blood. This is the story of the DNA test that shattered a family forever. It all began in 2009 in the quiet town of Maplewood, Ohio. The Carters were the kind of family neighbors envied. David Carter, a respected firefighter, known for his courage and warmth. Elaine Carter, his devoted wife, a schoolteacher with a soft smile and sharp wit. Their two children, Ryan, 14, and Mia, 10. To the outside world, they were picture perfect. But behind the curtains, small cracks were forming. David had started working longer hours. Elaine noticed him becoming withdrawn, distracted. Meanwhile, Ryan was going through teenage rebellion, fights at school, shouting matches at home. Still, nobody expected the storm that was about to hit. It started with whispers. A neighbor claimed they'd overheard Ryan shouting at Elaine one afternoon, screaming, "You're not even my real mom." Elaine brushed it off as teenage anger, but the words stuck with David. Soon after, David discovered something that chilled him, an old envelope hidden in Elaine's dresser. Inside was a hospital bracelet from the day Ryan was born, but the father's name was missing. The seed of doubt was planted. And so, late one evening, David did something he would never have imagined. He swabbed Ryan's toothbrush, slipped it into a baggie, and mailed it to a private DNA testing service. Weeks later, a plain white envelope arrived. David locked himself in the bathroom to open it. The letter inside was clinical, cold. Paternity test result, excluded. David was not Ryan's biological father. The floor seemed to give way beneath him. His hands shook. His world, his marriage, his family, everything suddenly felt like a lie. But David didn't confront Elaine immediately. He waited. He watched. And what he found only deepened the mystery. One stormy night, David sat across from Elaine at the dinner table, the envelope in his hand. The kids were asleep upstairs. "Who is he?" David demanded, voice trembling with rage. Elaine froze. Her face went pale. After a long silence, she whispered the name, Michael Green, a man David knew all too well. His former best friend. The revelation hit like a sledgehammer. The betrayal wasn't just his wife, it was his friend. David's rage boiled over. Neighbors later recalled hearing shouting, breaking glass, Elaine's sobs piercing through the walls. 2 weeks later, Michael Green was found dead in his apartment, strangled. The scene was brutal. Furniture overturned, photographs ripped apart, a broken bottle on the floor. And in the middle of it all, a single clue. A firefighter's glove, smeared with blood. Police were called immediately, and suspicion fell straight on David. Detectives described David as calm, almost eerily so, when they brought him in for questioning. He denied everything. "I haven't seen Michael in years. Why would I?" But cracks soon showed. His alibi for the night of the murder didn't hold. Surveillance cameras caught his truck near Michael's apartment. And then came the damning detail, DNA under Michael's fingernails. A match to David Carter. It seemed like an open and shut case. But just as prosecutors prepared to lock David away, a shocking inconsistency emerged. Forensic analysts discovered something strange. The DNA under Michael's nails wasn't a full match. It was close, but not exact. Almost as if it belonged to someone related to David. That revelation sent investigators spiraling down a darker path. If it wasn't David, then who was it? Detectives dug deeper into the Carter family. They interviewed Ryan, who by now was angry, withdrawn, and defensive. And that's when Ryan dropped a bombshell. He admitted he'd gone to Michael's apartment the night of the murder. He said he wanted answers. Wanted to know if Michael was really his father. But when detectives pressed further, about the bruises on his knuckles, the scratches on his arms, Ryan fell silent. Could a 14-year-old boy have killed the man who fathered him? David was released on bail, but his life was destroyed. Neighbors who once waved at him now whispered behind his back. His career as a firefighter was in jeopardy. Elaine, torn between protecting her son and grieving the truth, refused to testify. She locked herself in silence. and Ryan was drowning in guilt. He stopped going to school, stopped speaking to friends. He carried a secret so heavy, it crushed him. But the real shock came when prosecutors ordered a new round of DNA testing, not just on David, but on Ryan, Elaine, and Michael's remains. What they uncovered changed everything. The results revealed that Michael wasn't Ryan's father either. So if David wasn't the father, and Michael wasn't the father, then who was? The case took a dark new turn, unraveling a web of secrets, lies, and betrayal that reached far beyond the Carter household. And at the center of it all was Ryan, a boy trapped in a nightmare he never asked for. This was no longer just about paternity. It was about murder, about identity, about a family built on lies. And the truth? The truth was only beginning to surface. The DNA test that was meant to bring clarity had done the opposite. It had shattered lives, destroyed trust, and unleashed a spiral of violence. A boy searching for his father, a husband betrayed by his wife, and a man lying dead in his apartment. But the real question remains. If neither David nor Michael was the father, then who was? And more importantly, what dark secrets was Elaine still hiding? The DNA test was supposed to bring answers. Instead, it set fire to everything. David wasn't Ryan's father. Michael wasn't Ryan's father. So who was? The truth was buried somewhere in the shadows of Elaine's past. And once it began to surface, nothing would ever be the same. The Carter household became a battlefield of silence. David, once the family's protector, now slept alone, his firefighter badge collecting dust on the dresser. Elaine, gaunt and hollow-eyed, barely ate, barely spoke. Ryan, just 14, carried the weight of suspicion heavier than any teenager should. Detectives circled like vultures, convinced Ryan knew more than he let on. But without clear evidence, they couldn't charge him. Not yet. Detective Laura McKinney, a seasoned investigator with a sharp instinct for lies, took over the case. She believed the key to everything wasn't in the murder scene. It was in the tangled history of Elaine Carter. She dug through old records, hospital files, employment histories, even faded photographs from Elaine's college years. And that's when she found him, Dr. Alan Morris, a former physician at the hospital where Elaine had given birth to Ryan. Dr. Morris was no stranger to scandal. Years earlier, he'd quietly resigned amid allegations of inappropriate relationships with patients. Nothing had ever been proven, but whispers followed him wherever he went. When detectives tested his DNA against Ryan's, the result was undeniable. Alan Morris was Ryan's biological father. The revelation stunned everyone. David was shattered all over again. The betrayal now stretched back to the very moment of Ryan's birth. Elaine broke down under questioning, admitting she'd had a brief, secret relationship with Morris during her marriage. She swore David was never meant to find out. But the question remained, what did this have to do with Michael's murder? For Ryan, the truth was unbearable. His real father wasn't the man who raised him, nor the man he thought might have been. It was a stranger, a disgraced doctor he'd never met. Late one night, Ryan stormed out of the house. Elaine followed, desperate to comfort him. Neighbors later described hearing Ryan's voice crack in anguish. "My whole life has been a lie. I don't even know who I am anymore." That same week, detectives found Ryan's fingerprints at Michael Green's apartment, smudged on a broken bottle near the crime scene. The evidence against him was tightening like a noose. Just as prosecutors prepared to indict Ryan for murder, Detective McKinney uncovered something chilling: security footage from a parking garage near Michael's apartment. It showed Ryan entering the building that night, but he wasn't alone. A tall figure in a dark coat followed just minutes later. The footage was grainy, but the outline was clear. It wasn't David. And it wasn't Ryan. It was someone else entirely. Under relentless questioning, Elaine finally cracked. She admitted there was more she hadn't told. Years ago, before she married David, she'd been stalked by a man she once dated, a man who refused to let her go. His name, Victor Hale, a volatile figure with a criminal record for assault and harassment. Detectives began to suspect that Victor might have resurfaced, targeting Michael, and possibly manipulating Ryan in the process. But before police could track him down, Victor vanished. No forwarding address. No trace. just gone. The Carters were unraveling. David started drinking, consumed by rage and humiliation. Elaine withdrew into herself, haunted by old mistakes. And Ryan, angry and lost, drifted further into darkness. One night, Ryan disappeared. His phone was left behind, his bed untouched. The only clue, a crumpled note in his backpack with 3 words scrawled in shaky handwriting: "I'm not safe." Days later, a hiker stumbled upon a blood-stained hoodie near the edge of Maplewood Forest. It belonged to Ryan, but there was no body. Detectives now faced a terrifying question. Had Ryan run away? Had someone taken him? Or had the truth finally caught up with him? Ryan Carter was gone. His hoodie, found in the woods, was soaked with blood. But his body was nowhere. The DNA test had shattered a family. The murder had destroyed their trust. Now, with a missing child, the case was spiraling into something far more sinister. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about survival. The entire town of Maplewood turned out to search the forest. Volunteers combed through brush, flashlights piercing the dark. Helicopters roared overhead, dogs barked in the distance, the smell of damp earth clinging to every breath. But days turned into weeks, and Ryan never surfaced. David grew restless. He spent nights stumbling through the woods with a lantern, muttering his son's name into the silence. Elaine, consumed with guilt, broke down in tears daily. Detective McKinney, however, wasn't convinced Ryan was dead. The blood on the hoodie was real, but the amount wasn't enough to prove fatal. Someone wanted them to believe Ryan was gone. Then came the break. Surveillance footage from a rural gas station, 60 miles away. The blurry camera showed Ryan, alive, standing beside a tall man in a dark coat. The man's face was partly hidden, but investigators recognized the outline: Victor Hale, the stalker from Elaine's past. McKinney now believed Victor had taken Ryan, perhaps grooming him, manipulating him, maybe even convincing him he was the only person Ryan could trust. But the motive remained unclear. Why Ryan? Digging deeper into Victor's past, detectives found something chilling. Court records revealed that Victor had once filed a paternity claim against Elaine years ago, claiming Ryan was his son. The court had dismissed it for lack of evidence, but the obsession never left him. Now, with Ryan missing, that old claim took on new weight. Could Victor believe Ryan was his biological child? When investigators pulled his DNA, the results shocked everyone. Victor was not Ryan's father. But the test uncovered something else. Something no one saw coming. Before detectives could act, news broke. Dr. Alan Morris, the disgraced doctor revealed as Ryan's biological father, was found dead. His body was discovered in his home, tied to a chair, his face bruised and battered. On the wall, scrawled in blood, were 3 chilling words: "He is mine." The message sent shivers through investigators. This wasn't random. This was personal. Victor Hale had turned the case into a twisted war over Ryan. Meanwhile, Ryan's world had become a nightmare. Held in a remote cabin, the air heavy with smoke and damp wood, Victor fed him lies every day. "Your mother betrayed you. David isn't your real dad. Morris was nothing. I'm the only one who ever wanted you." Ryan, confused and broken, didn't know what to believe anymore. All he knew was that escape seemed impossible. Every creak of the floorboards reminded him he was trapped. But deep down, Ryan wondered, if Victor wasn't his father, why was he so obsessed with him? Back home, Elaine's guilt consumed her. First the affair, then the lies, and now Ryan's disappearance. It all traced back to her choices. One evening, she confessed something to Detective McKinney she had kept hidden for decades. Years ago, before David, before Morris, she'd had a brief, dangerous relationship with Victor. She ended it after he became violent. But in her darkest moments, she feared he might have been Ryan's father. The DNA had ruled that out. Still, Victor's obsession made horrifying sense. He didn't want Ryan because he was his blood. He wanted Ryan because he believed Ryan should have been his. Then came the final blow. A package arrived at the Carter home. No return address. Inside was a single VHS tape. David slid it into an old player, the screen flickering to life. There was Ryan, tied to a chair, his face pale, eyes swollen from crying. Behind him, Victor loomed in the shadows, his voice low and chilling. "You took him from me once. This time, I decide how the story ends." The tape cut to black. The Carters froze in terror. The police were powerless. And the question now wasn't if Ryan would come home. It was whether he'd survive long enough for them to ever see him again. The VHS tape was more than a threat. It was a declaration of war. Ryan, tied to a chair. Victor Hale's voice echoing through the room like a death sentence. "This time, I decide how the story ends." The Carter family sat frozen in front of the television, the weight of those words pressing down like a coffin lid. Now, this was no longer just an investigation. This was a race against time. Detective Laura McKinney called an emergency task force. The FBI was brought in, specialists in abduction and hostage cases. Maps spread across tables, photographs pinned to boards, the sound of radios crackling as officers prepared for a confrontation. But the problem was clear. Victor hadn't left a trace of where he was holding Ryan. No fingerprints on the tape, no identifiable background sounds, nothing. Except one detail. During the tape, in the background, a faint train horn could be heard. Investigators narrowed it down to an abandoned rail line outside Maplewood. The area was remote, miles of forest and rusting warehouses. The perfect hiding place. David insisted on joining the search. "That's my son in there. I won't sit back while you hunt for him like a criminal case file." But Elaine resisted, her guilt rising to the surface. "You don't understand, David. Victor doesn't just want Ryan, he wants me. This is my fault." The two fought bitterly, their voices cracking under the weight of years of betrayal. Neighbors later recalled seeing David storm out of the house, fists clenched, as Elaine collapsed onto the porch in tears. The family was breaking apart just when Ryan needed them most. Inside the cabin, Ryan's nightmare deepened. Victor sat across from him, cigarette smoke curling through the air, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows. His words were venomous, dripping with obsession. "Your mother lied. David lied. Morris lied. I'm the only one who's telling you the truth. You were supposed to be mine." Ryan trembled but tried to resist. He whispered, "You're not my dad. You'll never be my dad." Victor's response was chilling. He leaned close, his breath hot against Ryan's ear. Maybe not by blood, but soon by choice. Back at the precinct, Detective McKinney uncovered something that made her stomach drop. Victor had been stalking Elaine for decades, but his obsession went further than anyone knew. Hidden in his old storage unit were dozens of photographs. Elaine's wedding, the children's birthdays, even candid shots of Ryan walking home from school. The scariest detail? Some photos were taken inside the Carter home. Victor had been there, watching, waiting, for years. The task force finally tracked Victor's van near the rail line. They moved in silently, guns drawn, hearts pounding in their ears. But the cabin they found was empty. The ropes were cut. The chair overturned. The smell of stale smoke and gasoline hung heavy in the air. Victor had been there. Ryan had been there. But they were gone. In the corner of the cabin sat a single videotape. When investigators played it, their blood ran cold. The screen flickered. Ryan sat on the floor this time, his face pale, lips trembling. Victor's voice was calm, almost soothing. "You've wasted your time chasing me. The game has changed. And now, Ryan will prove his loyalty. Next time you see him, he won't be your son anymore." Detective McKinney's phone buzzed seconds later. A call from dispatch. A witness had just reported seeing a teenage boy wandering a highway outside of town, confused, barefoot, and covered in blood. It was Ryan. But when officers rushed to the scene, they found something that turned the case on its head. Ryan wasn't alone. He was holding a knife. And he was whispering one chilling phrase over and over again. "He told me what to do." Ryan Carter stood on the side of a lonely highway. His hoodie torn, his feet bare, his hands trembling around a knife. Blood smeared his arms. And through cracked lips, he whispered again and again. "He told me what to do." The police closed in, guns drawn, the blue and red lights flashing against the night sky. This was the moment everyone feared, Was Ryan a victim, or had Victor Hale finally turned him into something darker? Detective Laura McKinney stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Ryan put the knife down. "You're safe now. No one here will hurt you." Tears streaked Ryan's dirt-stained face. His grip tightened on the blade. He said, if I let go, everything ends." From the trees nearby, a shadow moved. Victor Hale emerged, his coat flapping in the wind, his eyes wild with triumph. "Don't listen to her, Ryan. You're mine. You've always been mine." The air thickened with tension. The smell of gasoline still lingered on Victor's clothes, the faint hum of passing cars the only sound in the silence. David Carter couldn't stay silent any longer. Breaking past the officers, he called out to his son. His voice was raw, broken, but filled with desperate love. "Ryan, look at me. You're my son. No matter what that man says. No matter what the blood test says. You are mine." Ryan's hand shook violently. The knife slipped, clattering to the pavement. His chest heaved as if the weight of every secret, every lie, every betrayal was crashing down at once. Victor roared in fury and lunged forward. But before he could reach Ryan, officers swarmed, tackling him to the ground. The struggle was violent, but finally Victor Hale, the man who haunted the Carters for years, was handcuffed, shouting curses as he was dragged away. Ryan collapsed into David's arms, sobbing. For the first time in months, David held his son close, whispering, "It's over. You're safe." Elaine rushed forward, her tears soaking Ryan's hair. In that moment, the broken family clung together, not as victims of betrayal, but as survivors. The DNA test had shattered their lives. But love, raw, unconditional, and imperfect, was what pieced them back together. Weeks later, Victor Hale was sentenced, his crimes finally catching up with him. David returned to the firehouse. Elaine sought counseling and began to heal from the guilt of her past. And Ryan, though scarred by what he endured, slowly rebuilt his life, supported by parents who, despite everything, chose to stand by him. The Carter family wasn't perfect. They never would be. But through pain, lies, and loss, they had found something stronger than blood: resilience. The DNA test was meant to reveal the truth. Instead, it unleashed chaos, betrayal, and bloodshed. But in the end, it also revealed something far more powerful. That family isn't always defined by DNA, but by the love that refuses to give up. The Carters would never forget the darkness they endured, but they walked into the future together, scarred, yes, but unbroken. And for Ryan, that was enough. If this story gripped you as much as it gripped us to tell it, don't forget to subscribe to Dark Justice Files. We bring you more true crime stories, more chilling mysteries, and more unforgettable endings every week. Because sometimes, the darkest stories hold the brightest truths.